Providence, Rhode Island. I'm an artist, an educator, creative. Um, I have a hip hop initiative, a hip hop educational initiative called Hope Scholars, where the mission is to validate and affirm hip hop in academic spaces. Um, I'm also an adjunct professor, and I have a project coming out on March 3rd called Hope All Is Well. And yeah, I'm just, always trying to, no matter what the medium, just trying to advance the culture. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Saga.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is, stage name is cool. My real name is Louis LeBron. I go by the stage name The Saga, TH3 SAGA. I am a singer, I'm a songwriter, rapper, and more widely known as a battle rapper. And I think what makes my story just a tad different from just being a battle rapper, for those who know what it's for, um, I stand as the pioneer of a movement as the first Christian battle rapper um, to make it to the platform that is widely known as URL, which is the Ultimate Rap League. It's one of the most popular battle leagues in the world. Yeah, I battled some people you may have seen on TV before, people like Charlie Clips, who's seen on MTV Wild and Out. Um, yeah, musically on the music side of life as a singer and songwriter, rapper, I've worked with people like Kenny Lattimore. I worked with people like Genuine. Worked with people like on the Christian side. I worked with people like Bizzle, What Up RG, Aaron Cole, Caleb Mitchell, and I was graced with the privilege of working with Pharrell and Adidas on a campaign called Don't Be Quiet, which, pretty much advocates for things that we're going to be talking about today. Just, yeah, and I'm just really excited to just share my story and share my opinion on these things with y'all. Hopefully you gain some insight from what we have to say today.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Maya, you have the floor.
Hey, peace, everybody. What's good? Peace to Karina, John Hope, the Saga. My name is Maya Maiden, aka Raw Fire, and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So shout out the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, everybody holding it down in Minnesota. And I actually am not an MC. I come from the world of choreography and dance. So shout out all the dancers in hip hop. Yeah. So I have my own production company. We are a Twin Cities based arts curator, specifically in performing arts. So our mission is to provide equitable, engaging platforms for hip hop, youth, people of color, and women through performing arts. So I hold down one of the best choreographers evenings in Minnesota dedicated to hip hop. It's called Rooted Hip Hop Choreographers Evening, where we highlight, of course, the choreographers and dancers and other elements of hip hop. And I have been doing this curating since 2009. So that's been a while, but I've been a dancer forever since high school. And I'm not that old, but I'm about to turn 40 in a couple of weeks. So, shout out myself, birthday. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk from just all the perspectives. And yeah, let's get going.
I think it's funny because John said he's
Yeah.
actually dropping something on March 3rd that happens to be my birthday, and I turned
Yes.
30 that day. So
Well,
So
all
it's
right.
Pisces. It's a Pisces thing.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a Pisces thing. It's
oh,
you feel
That's
it.
cool.
It's
yes.
something going on here. There's
Yeah.
There's
something
something going
still going
on.
here.
Mine is March 13th.
Oh, come on.
So
This
we
is
got
Crazy.
we got a bunch
gang
of
stuff.
threes in the okay. We're gonna
Karina,
talk
you
about it
did
later.
that.
That's why there's a three in my name. That's a little Easter egg.
Go
That's why
three.
there's a three in my
There
name.
you go.
March 3rd. Stay.
Yes,
Definitely aligned. We are all meant to be here for a reason, for sure.
absolutely.
So I'm going to kick off our
Yes.
conversation. Once again, for anybody that's just tuning in, we are talking about the intersectionality of hip hop and activism. So we're going to explore a couple different topics and kind of just give our insight on how that works for us and our experience. So my first question, and feel free to go however you'd like. Can we depend on hip hop to be a leader in the work of activism?
I'll set it off. Can everyone hear me? I think there was some volume. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you better now.
Okay. All right. Cool. Can you repeat the question again?
Can we depend on hip hop to be a leader in activist work?
Absolutely. I believe that we can depend on hip hop as a culture, you know. So it's important to understand that this is a culture that's not just reduced to the music. You know, this is a phenomena that for many years, I think it was like 2017, um, you know, Nielsen deemed it the most dominant or most popular culture, but we've been knew that, you know what I mean? We curate, if we're able to, you know, inform and curate cool, then I have no doubt that we are able to do the same and have that same power in terms of making change. And when we talk about that culture, I'm looking at you know, a clear example is Stacey Abrams in Atlanta. And Keisha in Atlanta, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, I believe her last name is. Their strategy to, you know, in terms of politics in this current political election, this current election that just passed, they utilized hip hop. You know, she right before the Gucci Mane Jeezy verses, you know, she kind of introduced the floor and made and gave some remarks. So those are the types of things that, you know, that I think are examples of how hip hop can kind of penetrate the political arena. And in terms of activism, you see Tamika Mallory, you see even Angela Rye. You know, the way she sort of presents on those platforms like CNN, you know, unapologetic and with a hip hop sort of sensibility. So there's no question that hip hop can make the change that we need it to be. I just think it comes from we have to come from a place of valuing the culture, right? So self love and understand that we don't need validation from them other people. You know what I'm saying?
It's hard to ignore the influence that the culture has in hip hop. You know, I believe it to be one of the most influential genres of music. You know what I mean? Because coming from a sense of fashion, culture, terminology. You know, even though we're coming from different places, some people may be from the South. We adapt things on the East Coast, or somebody from the West brings something forth, and we adapt. We just like a melting pot of just a rich culture. And kind of to piggyback of what John was saying, even within my lane of battle rap, we see that two really big battle rappers named DNA and Charlie Clips, they ended up doing a rap battle to promote the pros towards voting for Biden. So we're using our voices in every aspect possible towards things that bring hope and bring change, positive change. You know what I mean? Into the culture. But I think it's always about reciprocating that love back into the culture as well, and appreciating how valued it should be, or you know how people may not see it that way. But I feel it to be one of the most influential and valuable assets in bringing change. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. When we talk about it's important, like you all said, to talk about the culture. So if we break down the actual language of hip hop, hip, intelligent movement, hop is intelligent movement, right? So hip hop, intelligent movement. So you have DJ intelligent movement, MC intelligent movement, B-boy intelligent movement, graph intelligent movement, knowledge intelligent movement. So if we break down those things, we are about intelligent movement. We came from the house party to the global stage. Shout out to all the Black creators that created hip hop. And then you got the Black and brown people collabing and things like that. So definitely when it comes to activism, this is what we do. And we need to start remembering the cultural aspects of it to keep it on and move it forward so we're not so separated.
Thank you for that. I wanted to touch on something that Saga had mentioned about utilizing lyrics or your voice in a way that promotes certain things. You know, you talked about how some of the battle rappers that you're aware of talked about Biden. Um, so that segues into my next question of the amount of weight we as a people put onto these hip hop leaders, and these people who are actually, you know, you guys are producing content. It's going out into the world. How do what is it that makes it right and what is it that makes it wrong when we put weight onto these hip hop leaders to speak up in these instances of change?
Um, I don't necessarily know if it's so binary as right or wrong. I just think that we need to um have a diverse uh uh a diverse voice, so in other words, I might not agree with Little Wayne's politics, you know what I'm saying? But he has every right to do whatever he wants to do. But if we can just create, if we could just come with the understanding that we're under this culture, but we're not monolith. You know what I mean? So Wayne doesn't necessarily, Wayne may speak for people, but he doesn't necessarily speak
Represent us all.
represent us all. You know what I mean? So in that respect, because I mean, I've seen, Candace Owens stand next to Kanye West. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So like, and I don't really rock with what she got to say. You know what I mean? So I think it's just, I think it's sort of stretching the narrative and understand that there is a place for us to impact, but it isn't like this monolithic thing. And I think that's where we get into, when we get into those weeds, it can become problematic. You know what I mean? Because I don't necessarily know if I want Boozy, talking for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I
That's
want him,
valid.
because homie kind of goes off the cuff. So yeah, I just think it's more or less, if we can have an opportunity for multiple voices to sort of choose from and inform our own personal ideals. I'm all for that.
We're never really gonna get it right in regards to finding the most ideal representation
Right.
of influence. I think it's like what John was saying. You got to pick and choose in certain aspects what you deem as right to you and what's
Mhm.
wrong, just based off your own personal. It's a case by case situation.
Yeah.
But what I think
Mhm.
helps to kind of uh, help us discern situations a little bit better would be judging the person's character beyond the artistry. I think when you think about an artist, sometimes we get so caught up in the musical aspect, we get easily caught up into just whatever they do. For me personally, I was big on Kanye West growing up. I loved Kanye West. But as I started to,
Yeah.
become my own individual, I see certain things that I can't align myself with, saying, okay, Kanye agrees with that. I can't agree with him on that because he's just my favorite artist. I have to
Mhm.
understand character in certain aspects. And I think when you think about how active they are in certain aspects of their community, how active they are in positive change and creating that and challenging positive change in their community, then you start to see, okay, even if I don't agree with certain things here, I have to admire and appreciate what's being done here. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of artists, they fall short with giving us that character that shows us that they're worth the weight of that the influence they have. Because to be honest, rappers have such a powerful influence in everything that goes on. You know what I mean? And sometimes you'll say the wrong things and people will follow that based off their influence. But I think we have to
Mhm.
examine character and who we decide to, deem as the perfect, or it's such a loose term to say perfect, but who we deem those that should hold such a high standard in what we do. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I piggyback off that and said, it's like that old saying, like, if everybody's gonna jump off a bridge, are you gonna jump off a bridge? Like,
Right.
you have to, some of this is about personal and family community accountability, right? So yes, so and so may have a view, but if it's not your view, then don't do that. I mean, and I think in this age of a lot of technology, and we see a lot more people than we did like in the 90s, and everything is always right here, then people just get caught up in the wave and things, and people don't think like you. I mean, you just, if I tell you this to go left and you're like, well, the store is over here, but I'm telling you to go left because that's where I think the store is. Most people be like, okay, you told me to go left. And I speak from this as a professor myself. I'm actually a scientist and a professor outside of this. So I mean, people believe what you tell them. And I mean, especially in the days of social media, everybody's an expert, but don't know nothing. So,
About
so
it.
we
Talk
have
about it.
we have to be just like, let's bring back the discernment and the questioning. Yeah, we can rock with folks on certain things, and we not may agree, but what else are they doing to have that whole picture and a whole being versus fragmented and segmented thoughts and sound bites of folks who are speaking or doing stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
when we first connected, the four of us, we talked a little bit also about cancel culture, right? And how easy it is to cancel somebody. Twitter will eat these hip hop artists apart or praise them to the top and have them trending all day. So I think if I'm getting the
Mhm.
consensus right, is allowing some grace and room for change with some of these leaders. Um, I guess I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate in that subject and just say, what if you are just morally not on the same page? And this might be a little left and I'll bring us back, but like the R. Kelly situation. I personally don't want to listen to R. Kelly ever again. As a woman, more morally, what he represents does not represent what I would like to engage myself in. So what do we do when that happens? When it's not just activism, but it's their entire moral compass that is up for discussion.
Mm. R. Kelly. So let me say this about that as another woman. Now, listen, now I grew up on R. Kelly. I used to bang R. Kelly heavily in the 90s. And we also, to some extent, knew what he was doing in the 90s. So I'm not saying I was right, but I got a whole bunch of us in that same boat. Now that it's become more public, and there's a more accountability, because like I said, he was doing this in the 90s and we knew that in the 90s too. Like a bunch of us did know that in the 90s and that stuff was happening. I don't think we knew the extent, in the breadth and depth. But I think that, I don't necessarily listen to R. Kelly now, but it's a part of what you connect to and how you grew up, right? So it can be very challenging to just be like, no, I'm not going to listen to this artist, etc., because you have those connections, you have those memories to like a block party or a house party, or some of those are good memories for you, doesn't necessarily mean like you condoning what the person did. So everything to me is sometimes not always black and white like
Black and
cut,
white.
but you know what I'm saying? So I'm just putting that out there, that a lot of us come from that same background, but I'm not condoning what he did, but I'm also knowing that we were aware of kind of what was going on, but we still listened to that joint anyway. I still went to R. Kelly concerts, and some of y'all did too back in the day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
hmm
Yeah, again, I think it's yeah, I don't think it's as clear as black and white. But I will say that it's important to understand, to to to, to really try hard to put the emphasis and the consideration on the victim, the messaging, and what and the victims. If I'm talking about R. Kelly, right? I'm in that context. You know what I mean? Like, like if we can create a space where um of more inclusivity, I think that is important, because it's not just R. Kelly, right? Like, and I think we
yeah,
talked about this the other day, like R. Kelly is
hmm
low hanging fruit, but there
right,
are it's easy to kind of just write that off, right? Because there's a populace, there's a consensus there, and the evidence is very much right in front of us about what he was doing, you know what I mean, with the surviving R. Kelly and things of that nature. But I think we need to also explore. I think someone put in the chat about our relations, hip hop's relationship with women, and from the LGBTQ community, and just hip hop's relationship with colorism, and light light versus dark, and women of different hues. There are so many elements, and sometimes we see our favorite artists make comments and things of that nature. And so for me, I go, what Tasaga was saying, character, and how prevalent this behavior is, right? So if said artist is doing this all the time, then I
Yes.
have a problem with that, because then that means that this is what they really on. If they make an off the cuff comment, a color commentary, and they come back and they say, hey, you know what? This was wrong, and this, that, and the third, and it's not just some sort of PR formality, then I can really
hmm
kind of discern and ration that person's artistry in my life. But so again, I just think, just a book, and I just think, R. Kelly is easy, but I think we got to look at other sort of microaggressive episodes where some of our favorites, man, are doing some wild shit. You know what I'm saying? So
It's for me personally. Let's just put this out there for everybody, right? If we're talking from a musical standpoint, we have to acknowledge R. Kelly is one of the best to ever do it, right? We have to.
Absolutely.
And this, I want everybody, and before we just jump the gun here, we're talking about from a musical standpoint, right? Musical standpoint, this man is one of the greatest minds in music. You know what I'm saying? But like John was saying, and like I was saying before, character, and on top of that, context. If this is a one-time situation that happened way long ago and we see change in what we've viewed in him, then okay, cool. But there's certain situations here where this has been brought up several times, which shows me the fruits of your heart. It shows me who you are when these microphones aren't on, the lights ain't on, and you have time to yourself. And it's like, for me personally, I don't care how great of an artist you are at that point. I can't appreciate the music as much as I did before because I know the heart behind it now. You know what I'm saying? And it becomes a situation where I know some people that still listen to him and they're like, oh, it's such great music. And then, okay, but that's how we get into a situation where we just start to we turn the blind eye to things that actually matter. His character.
Hey, Sal, can I ask you real quick? Is it possible for someone to, I don't know if it's compartmentalized, but because I think what Maya was talking about was really important, and I think if you come from Chicago, if you come from the Midwest, right? Like this man, it means something more than I'm from Providence, Rhode Island, and I grew up in that area. I rock with him. I used to, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, like, I like coming from Chicago, it means something, or the Midwest, it means something a little bit different. So is it possible that someone can listen, and I'm just throwing this out there, can listen and still not and still be against what he's doing, or that doesn't exist?
I feel like it,
because that's a real thing.
That is a real thing. It is definitely.
I think that they're mutually exclusive. Usually we say that if things aren't mutually exclusive.
Right. You think
for myself, maybe just because of the way that I love music, right? And the way that I listen to music for its lyricism, for understand, like if I know an artist and I see their vibe, social media helps you kind of learn people a little bit more, whether they're putting on a facade or not. That's neither here nor there, but I fall in love with artists because of their lyrics, because of what they portray out there enough for me to see, because I'm a fan. I don't know any of these people personally. And if that's what you're portraying, at least for someone just dropped in the chat, Black women should mean more. That's where the message is supposed to be heard in character. So yes, he might be a musical genius, but I personally cannot separate the thought of that. And people can deny that it's happened, or people can say that this is he say, she say, the media blows things up out of proportion, but I think that they are mutually exclusive. Like who your character is and your lyricism is the reason why I listen. And if that doesn't match with what I believe in, I'm not gonna play it.
I'll tell you real quick, John, real quick. I'm sorry. Like what kind of starts in the heart flows out the mouth, bro. And I feel as though when we listen to R. Kelly records, it's been right in front of us the whole time. It's been right, and that's what I'm saying though. Like, and I know it becomes a moment of conflict because sometimes you just like the song, but you don't support the artist, or you don't stand with where they are morally and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know him to write his own stuff, and he's writing from, as all artists do at some point in time, they come from a space of experience.
Correct.
And with those experiences that he has, whether good or bad, we hear it in the music. Just because it sounds good, sometimes we mask over the idea that this came from a dark place, or this came from something that we may not deem great. So it's like, it's hard for me personally. Don't get me wrong, please. I used to love Step in the Name of Love, all these good things, right? But then we also have to take into account the other records that were hits that, that kind of speak on what eventually led to the downfall of you know what I mean, of his character and who he is. So it's like this has kind of been around since way back then, and he's just now kind of getting caught up. So this is who he's always been. I can't align with that. You know, I can't.
Totally, Mike. Go
ahead,
I
Mike.
agree.
I'm gonna
I
wrap
agree.
out of the R. Kelly talk.
No, right? Yeah,
Yeah, because R. Kelly, we
Because
talk
we
about
could be here all day.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
We can use
okay.
the same knowledge for Kanye, right? Like, you know, yeah, pre-K and now, you know, not same difference, but same difference. So what I would also like to speak to is the information we have now. Now, back in the day, and like I said, I'm getting ready to turn 40, but back when these artists came out, we didn't have privy knowledge to everybody's doings and what they were going on. Like now we have all this information. So also we were younger. When R. Kelly came out, I was like 15, 16 years old. I'm almost 40, almost 40 now. So we have to take into account like you've, now you're 20 years older than what we were doing, what you were listening to, but also like we didn't have the same level of information that we do about artists like R. Kelly now, but also that we just have readily available for artists now, just readily available. So, yes, the industry may have known they probably knew what he was doing. Obviously, we know now that everybody was in alignment, but back then we didn't have all this information. A lot of stuff was kept private. And that's for artists, that's for actors, that's for a lot of folks in the media. You didn't hear a lot of stuff that was going on with people like you do today. So we're doing like a duality thing. Now we're applying things that we have found out now to back then. And now moving forward, we could better assess people up front, I feel, now than back in the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Try not to ramble, but it's easier now than it was back then.
Absolutely.
And now we found ourselves as, people that have grown up going back to assess now all the information I have now to apply it to when I was 15 years old back then, so.
No, these are all really fair assessments and they're at the heart of morality. And I think that's where we intersect that with activism and just who you are as a person. So thank you for that. We could be here for days talking about R. Kelly. So I want to become a little more lighthearted in our conversation. I wanted to ask, which era of hip hop did you come from or that you feel like you identify with the most? And were there examples of activism within those artists that maybe you loved and you listened to growing up? Or even now, is there someone that you're listening to like, okay, they, Saga, you're in a totally different realm, one that I'd love to explore and understand. Is there someone doing right, or even yourself?
Right.
What are some examples of that, or what did you love about the era of hip hop that you identify with?
Man, the first person that really comes to mind off top, especially within the culture and the genre that I'm, or the lane, the subgenre that I'm in, is one of my good friends. His name is Bruce Franks Jr. He goes by the battle rap name Oops, and he's an activist out in St. Louis. I don't know if anybody's ever watched it before. He has a documentary that was Grammy nominated called St. Louis Superman. And, it's just him using his influence from literally going from battle rap venues. Yeah, St. Louis Superman. I was like, okay, yeah. So it's his story going from like a battle rapper to somebody who's in the court and somebody who's protesting and somebody who's in the streets as well as the judicial system, like really working to bring effective change in the community as a battle rapper. And it's like, that's something I've always admired from him, because coming from that culture, we don't really see too many people stand up for things of value. It's a pretty vulgar, demeaning culture in regards to how we attack people. And he uses platforms on both ends to inspire, uplift, and bring change. And, it's a long line of them. After that, I would say people like B. Dot is another amazing artist who's also involved heavily in this community, who's involved heavily in change and organizing situations that bring forth a positive change in the neighborhood. But yeah, in regards to the era I grew up in, I would say like the era I grew up in, because I'm a 90s baby, you know what I'm saying? Like the 2000s was really it for me. Like the early 2000s is where I started to really appreciate hip hop. And I can't really say I recall anybody at that time that I saw led that effective movement or push forth in something in regards to politics or activism at the time, talking about early 2000s, maybe 2000 and maybe 2005, 2006. I can't really recall until like later on, but yeah.
I think for me it's Nip, Nip.
Oh yeah, I thought you were talking about just what we came up on. Nip. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think
proceed, my brother. Proceed.
Yeah. For me, Nip, he represented that on so many different levels, and I think also too, like, it's important to note that when we talk about activism or we talk about this work, it's important to sort of remove respectability politics. And like Nip did that extremely well, right? So like it's right. So there's all of us here. I'm assuming that we have a level of education. We went to college or post-secondary, whatever, right? But it's important to know that our lived experiences makes us experts in this work. You know what I'm saying? I don't like it ain't no master's degree. It ain't no, initials after my name or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so once we remove that, we get a Nipsey Hussle, like what Nipsey Hussle was doing in terms of like revitalization and what we call ABCD, asset-based community development. You know what I'm saying? He was able to see the value in people that did not have the degrees, that did not have the, the sort of cachet that we sort of normally point to and we deem valuable. And that is so important because it's very inclusive, and and we saw it work. Like it worked to a degree. Obviously you can make the case about how he left us, and when you hear that rhetoric of he should have left, or he should have put his store on Rodeo instead of in Crenshaw, you know what I mean? But no, I mean the numbers are there. Like he was in process of really revitalizing and making sure that the people that were from that community can participate in this revitalization, right? So that's the fundamental difference between revitalizing and gentrification, you know what I'm saying? And so when I think about Nip, and this was a dude, a lot of people don't know, he was adjunct, at Loyola, and like this guy is, a former Crip or whatever. We know his history. But if we had operated and had this wall of respectability politics, then we would do a disservice, and we might have ostracized a Nipsey Hussle. And so I think like the residual effect of his legacy shows that anybody can participate in this activism. You know what I'm saying? Anybody can participate in this work as long as they're passionate about it and they can align themselves with people. So for me, it was Nip.
I love what you said, John. You said the difference between gentrification and revitalization is doing it for the people in the places that we exist. And that goes back to that saying of you can't be what you can't see. How can you get people out of the hood if they don't even know what it looks like to be out of the hood? They live in a 10-block radius, and the crack didn't come from there. It came from Colombia, where somebody put it there. So how do they get out of this cycle if they don't see what they strive to be, or they might even not even strive to be that? Because if there's no representation, there's nothing to strive for. And I love that you said that about Nip, because I don't have an affinity towards artists in that way, but when he passed away, I think I've never cried that much for someone I didn't know. And there's this idea of like grieving people that you've never met, but to understand his impact, and I just connected with it very deeply. So I love that you said the difference between gentrification and revitalization is doing it within your own community. And I love that. Maya, I think you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree with what everybody's saying. They're hitting some high points. But as far as the era I come from, baby, I'm coming from golden era hip hop.
Come on now.
You tell me, I gotta just put this out there for people that need to understand where we come from. Golden era, we talk about mid 80s to mid 90s. So what I liked about hip hop then, in which I still rock to this day, is the diversity, the quality, the innovation, all the stuff that is, sometimes missing when we listen to mainstream hip hop today. So we're talking about from political to conscious, dance and gangster. Lots of women came through this era, like the Queen Latifah,
Yes.
Yo-Yo, MC Light,
Yo.
Come
Moni
on,
Love,
free.
Lil Kim,
Uh-huh.
Rage, Salt and Pepper. And let me just give you some more artists because people need to, if you don't think you golden era,
You're
if you
putting
don't think you've been
everybody on right
influenced,
now. If
I'm
you
Take
putting
don't,
out your
everybody
pens and
on.
pads.
People like
It's time to go
Run
to school.
DMC, LL Cool J, Eric B and Rakim, De La Soul, KRS-One, Public Enemy. People like even Ice-T, NWA, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Too Short, Kid and Play, The Fat Boys, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Heavy D,
I want your
Tribe,
playlist, Maya. You got to share your
Outcast,
My
Wu-Tang Clan, 36 Chambers, okay? Ghetto
Come
Boys,
on now.
Gangstar, Tupac, Biggie, and
Yeah.
this is where we come from. So, baby, I shout out all the golden era people. You know how we do it, y'all. So, we were influenced by old school. That comes before then, like the old school, like Roxanne, Shantae, and all them. Then our era is golden era hip hop. So, coming from that era, like I said, even if you mention some of those artists, it goes back to a couple things in terms of separate, like, do we separate the artists from the contribution they gave to what they're actually doing? Because some people would find problems with Nipsey Hussle too. Like he was a former Crip and gangster and all that kind of stuff. Hey, somebody shout out Run DMC. Hey. So it goes back. People are just multidimensional, right? And that it is hard to separate what they've contributed and what their music is to what they have done or are doing in their real life. So yeah, some people find some of those people on my list definitely problematic if we really look at it. But yeah, it's not easy, y'all. But we all came from the different eras. So shout out all the different eras of our entire culture, which makes us just the bomb, really. So
that list shows me so much about that specific point in time in hip hop. Like you name so many heavy hitters, so many stars, right? That come from so many different experiences and stories and backgrounds, but there was a sense of unity and what they stood on all together. And I think that's what made it so powerful. There wasn't any divisiveness. You know what I mean? You could love your Run DMCs, your LLs, your MC Lights, your Queen Latifahs, right?
Right.
Based off your own personal preference, right? But one thing you can't deny is the unity in that era of hip hop and how powerful. Like you couldn't ignore what the needs that needed to be met by the hip hop community at that point in time. If you didn't hear from her, you were gonna hear from him.
Right.
If you didn't hear from him, you gonna hear from them. And it's just like that sense of togetherness is something that I feel like we haven't had in so long, standing together on one common cause.
That's what I was literally gonna just say. Does that exist now? You're talking about unity and this kind of one voice, one understanding. Does that exist now, or is there an example of that today?
I think there's pockets. I think it's growing, right? We got to understand that this culture is roughly about 50 years old, so it's growing, and there's now I think we're seeing different generations and subcultures and things of that nature. But I think it's happening, and I think there is a push. What I'd like to see is a push for that unity to be amongst the generations, right? So like where we don't look down on the newer artists, and the newer artists don't look down on the older artists. I think there's room, and I think there should be room for sort of that intermingling, if you will. But I think it's happening. I can't think of examples that come to my head, but I would say it's pretty healthy where I think I think you saw it again with the initiative of our voice against Trump. Like we it was a chorus, whether it was Little Baby all the way to you know uh You
Who
know,
comes to mind for me is J. Cole being on the front
Yeah.
lines and
right?
being
Yeah,
out
and
there
Mhm.
in North Carolina, actually
Mhm.
out in the streets with the
Mhm.
people, which I think is another level of connectivity that not a lot of artists are willing
Mhm.
to do.
right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's happening.
And I think it also comes back to something which we first started talking about, is that we're not a monolith, and
Mm,
also how to really represent that in the mainstream. Because like I said, when it comes to all this technology, social media, et cetera, you can get voices from anywhere, but who's being pushed the most?
Come on.
Who's being put on the pedestal the most? And so back in the golden era, first of all, they were in charge of all their own stuff. They didn't have a marketing team, y'all.
there was no
Nobody else
Twitter.
was speaking for there was, there was no Twitter, there was no nothing, but there was also no marketing. They were controlled, they were representing their regions and their communities with their lyrics and promoting themselves, right? So that's a little bit different now in terms of the music industry and what gets seen. But I think it goes back to really, who are our leaders? In terms of Black culture, we have this discussion all the time, like, who are the leaders? But if we don't have a leader or a couple leaders, then making sure all the voices are equally available for you to hear. And back then, like you said, if you didn't vibe with this person, you knew where to go. If you was feeling some type, you was feeling gangster some days, then you went over here. If you was feeling like the party some days, you went over here. But you could get that readily available, and it was seen, right? So I think it sometimes goes back to that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
I
think,
think
Saga.
oh, go
no,
ahead, Saga.
yeah, I mean, kind of like what John said, there's certain pockets in today or around this time that we see little moments of unity, of unison, and how we move. And I think even besides protesting and going against Trump, we also saw it in supporting and rallying behind Obama. You know what I mean? There was a certain time,
Right.
yeah, like you sit here and you think
Mm-hmm.
about, all right, we have a certain agenda amongst our community, amongst our culture, right? There's a need that needs to be met. And it's like this kind of like this unspoken, like, look at one another as artists and as people of influence. We go, yeah, we know what we need to do. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to call up. I feel as though everybody around that time when Obama was getting ready to become president, everybody had something involving that change that was necessary in bringing Obama into office, using their influences, right? So it's kind of just like, okay, you know what you need to do. You know what you need to do. You know what you need to put in this song. You know how you need to speak about you know how you need to speak to the people on this record. Different styles, different, you may
Mm-hmm.
not rock with this artist, but like I said, in regards to the golden era, you're gonna get something from this artist, or you may get a certain perspective from this girl or this guy or this group. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's not as present as it was back then, but then like John said, there were definitely certain pockets where we started to see that moment where we came together regardless of style or feel of music. Like, okay, we all
Mm-hmm.
know what we need to push forth in the need. So yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to comment on something that Maya said. And in this era of marketing being at the forefront of how we receive artists, I think it's also important for us as consumers to really curate what we consume, right? Like, who are you following?
Mm-hmm.
What are you
Mm-hmm.
looking at all day on your Instagram feed? Are you following the shade rooms and the TMZs, or are you following maybe these people who are on the front lines and having, I don't want to say better content, but consuming something different so your narrative is different? Because I look at Twitter like my news feed. I'm going to get something off of Twitter or Black Twitter first before anybody else. So I think it's important for us
Mm-hmm.
as consumers to really think about how we're consuming this stuff and know that we have more control than we think. Like, I don't have to be bombarded by all of the gossip and all of the, the bad media. It can be funneled out, but I guess you just draw the line of how well do you want to be informed? Because if you only see the good, then how are we aware of all the bad that's happening?
Mm-hmm. And I'll piggyback off that, Karina, because my the way I curate, and which makes me different in Minnesota and a lot of places that have curators connected to institutions, is I don't go to the conferences that the rest of them go to. There's conferences where you can go pick up artists and they go present their work, et cetera. I'm not interested in that, right? If you made it to that level, then I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the people that I see on the block. I'm interested in where you're performing at your church. I go specifically search out those people. which takes more effort, which takes more work, which takes building relationships. So, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like we gotta do some work. You got to work for it. And so that really connects. As I said, I come from, I'm the dancer of the crew here. So when I'm curating, I specifically don't go to those conferences for a reason. Because if you've made it there, then you don't need somebody like me. I'm looking for somebody that's been dancing on the corner for 5 years and nobody ever paid them any mind because they're not at this level, whatever this level is. That's who I want.
So you're
But
creating
that takes work.
opportunity for others.
Yes, but that takes work. It's not easy. It's not easy to find folks. Yeah, I use social media, etc. now, but I'm looking for those folks that nobody give a second look to because they're not of this caliber or you're not at this level. I specifically look for those folks, and then they become those people. Like I, give them opportunity, and all of a sudden now other people see them. And what's funny is, a lot of people come to my shows to scout for their stuff. I already did all the work. So they go, oh, let's take this person, which is okay, because if these dancers want to do certain things and go certain places, that's okay. But I'm ready to do the work and I'm in the streets, so that's the kind of mentality that we also have to have as consumers. Are you ready to do the work? Are you in the proverbial streets, so to speak?
I love that. Go ahead, John.
No, I love that. I love that because that to me, that speaks to a certain mindset that I'd like to see in the culture, where we need to not operate under or seek this white gaze, you know what I'm saying, or this sort of white Eurocentric standard of approval and value. So for instance, if these conferences are this sort of validation or stamping that Maya is talking about, I would make the equation to some of our like, I'll give an example. Like I feel like you'll see everybody go to the Grammys, right? But BET Awards, Soul Train Music Awards, you know what I mean? Like we're not as present, there, or there isn't the value that's there in those, like sort of in our own infrastructure, you know what I mean? So I just think that, that mindset that Maya's talking about, like we don't need that sort of validation from these, predominantly white institutions, you know what I'm saying? So I think we need to put more value in our own, wear our own clothes, do our own, curate our own events, curate our own type of culture and experiences, you know what I mean? Because you can't tell me, right? If there's no one on God's green earth that can tell me that Scarface is not a legend to me, or MC Lyte is not a legend to me, and I don't even know if I don't think they won a Grammy, right? You know what I mean? Like so like I just think that we, the mindset that Maya's speaking to, I'd love to see that, permeate, throughout the culture, where we can value our own and we don't need to operate under this auspice of the white gaze, I hope,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
That makes sense. You understand?
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have about. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
No, go ahead, please go.
We have about 10 minutes left. So I do want to be able to give people a chance that are in the attendee room, if you guys want to send through some questions.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Shout
out 612. Somebody said 612. You know what it is, ma'am.
That's my brother.
We'll start to take your questions now, and then we'll wrap up. But thank you so much, guys. This has been we need more than an hour to discuss all of these different things.
Yeah.
Nah, this is awesome. This is amazing. I love this. Right.
To wrap us, while people are maybe getting their thoughts together with some questions, I said this to you guys when we first came on to come put this panel together, is we wanted these conversations to be solution oriented and have people go away with something that is tangible to make change. So I guess I'm just going to pose that as a last question. Like, how do we use hip hop to relieve oppression and to be, that solution for some of these greater issues? I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer for that, but just want to hear your thoughts and we can wrap up from there.
I think one of the first things we do is, when we have panels like this, follow these folks. Follow John Hope, follow the saga, follow me. these people are doing real live things now, right? They're doing real live things now. Another I think we've touched on a bunch of stuff, like you got to start thinking for yourself, right? Thinking for yourself and do some of the work. Because, you know, when it comes down to hip hop culture, one of the things that I love about us is we respect the work. That, I mean, that's undeniable. We respect paying dues, you know, like things like that. We have to go back to some of those core concepts that elevated our culture where they are. We do hold people accountable. Now, it ain't got to be no rah-rah type of stuff, you know, but there is some accountability that needs to be had. If that's pulling up, you know, people's side, like, look, fam, that wasn't it, you know, and all love and etc. And it's, we got to move out of the whole, I'm gonna put you on blast. I mean, would you do this? Like, would you do this in front of them? Like, if you can't put people on blast in front of their face, then let's refrain from trying to blast people, you know, on social media, you know, when you can easily, like, if you're not gonna call nobody up and say it, you know, let's revert back to some of the old, like the old school, like ways of handling things, you know. That'll be super helpful in solutions in terms of activism. And you know, sometimes it takes calling somebody and just saying, did you know this was going on? Because I think another thing that happens is we assume everybody knows what's going on with everything, and that just ain't the case. So some of those key, like, let's get back to relationships, real ones.
Maya, someone asked for your info. Just drop in the chat your @ so people can contact you. But go ahead, John.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think I agree with what Maya said. I think you know, just understand our value. You know, more self-love as a culture, and understand our value, and understand that we don't necessarily need that external validation. Hip hop at its core is challenges the norms, you know. And so if we can continue to challenge the norms and sort of penetrate, particularly in the academic space, man, you know, I feel like there's a sophistication that's growing right now that is challenging what we've been taught for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, we're not, and when that with as that sophistication increases, the patience gets minimized. We ain't got time for the bullshit. So, like, you know what I mean? So I just think you know, we need to continue to grow in that respect. You know what I mean? Where there's a sophistication, where we're like, okay, you know, Black History Month is cool, but you know, it's every day. You know what I mean? You know, Juneteenth. You know, and I'm seeing it happen. I think within like the last year or two, like this just awareness. You know, and now we're holding people accountable, and I'd love to see more of not the cancel culture, but the intra critiquing. So in other words, you know, Saga can pull me to the side. Yo, Hope, man, hey, you kind of you bugging right now. You know what I mean? But I still love you. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay, word. All right, where did I go wrong? You know what I'm saying? All right, bet. Because if we can have that intra critiquing, and that will uphold and will really foster growth and development. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, yeah, as a culture, we're like 50 years old, you know, a little older. So, you know, let's act as such. You know, we have too many frames of reference that we just can't be relying on. Yeah, man, well, Tupac and Biggie and Woody Woo, blah, blah, blah. Nah, you know what I'm saying? So, you know.
Listen, I feel like at the end of the day, you'll never find the whole answer in one, but you'll find fragments of it in all. You know what I mean? It involves community. It involves accountability, like John was saying. It involves a sense of unison in what we do. You know what I mean? We all play, you know, as a Christian, you know, like I believe in this, everybody playing a part in the body of Christ, right? Yeah. But I feel like there's a movement starts with the bodies in line. When the body knows, every person knows their function and what we need to do to bring forth an effective change. And if I use the analogy of a body, sometimes you may not be the face, but your role as the pinky is just as important as somebody that's on the foot or the elbow, or like we all play our own distinctive roles in making sure that this movement continues to move in a productive and a powerful fashion. we're not all going to come to you with the same situation. We may not come to you the same way. What you may get from me, you may not get from Maya. What you get from Maya, you may not get from John. But we are going to get it from somebody who's aligned with the sense of a community and accountability if we all just align ourselves in the right fashion. So, you know what I mean? You're not going to get the whole thing from one person.
Right.
But if we all do what we're called to do in pushing this forward and making this an urgency to push the importance of this culture in the right way to the right influences, you will get it somehow, some way from somebody else aligned with that.
Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna take this last question and then we can wrap. What artist or artist has really influenced your self-love journey?
I'm just Nip. That's all. You know, Nipsey Hussle. You know.
Yeah.
Nip.
Yeah.
For me, and she's just overall in R&B, pop, and kind of the hip hop realm, I'm a huge Kehlani fan. There are some songs and some lyrics that I used to listen to when she first came out and had a couple of mixtapes, and I still bump them to this day when I need a little boost. So that's someone for me in the industry that I really turn to for, you just feel it's like, how did you write what I've been feeling this whole time? And I couldn't formulate it into words. So that's somebody for me.
Word. I would say for me, Queen Latifah. And it just goes to show the magnitude of how great we are in terms of hip hop culture, from being in hip hop, she's still hip hop, right? But she's done and, been in so many spaces and still maintained, her true, like, this is me and I'm gonna hold it down regardless of what space I'm in. So that goes to speak to the activism part. It's like, we can be in these different circles, y'all, and still talk the same way we talk, walk the same way we walk, and be in these spaces unless we have to. We don't really have a choice. Yeah. So,
I mean, I mentioned him earlier, but I'm gonna say Kanye West. I think what really helped in developing who I am as an individual was seeing how much of an individual he came out the gate as in that time. Talking about the early 2000s, we're talking about everybody was solely just on G-Unit gangster rap. It was about the streets. It was about this, that, and the third. And this kid from Chicago pulls up in a pink polo with a bear mascot, rapping about his insecurities and his flaws and his doubts and his worries. And I'm sitting here like, I identify with this, and it's dope. And you see, as he grows as an artist, he's always had his heart on his sleeve. He's always just been the person to just take a chance and be the first person at the top of the hill to come back and let people know that there's something new coming in regards to just leading a certain wave and being an individual at that. And I think that kind of helped me to grow, not only as an artist, but as a person in regards to just standing out and being my own person, not falling in line with what the norm is, not conforming, and adventure and taking adventures musically as well. Like, you know what? I've been holding the singing part of my life back for so long. You know what? I'm gonna sing more. I know people know me as a rapper. I'm gonna do this more. I'm gonna speak on my experiences. I'm gonna speak on my insecurities. I'm gonna speak on the suicide and the all these different things. But it came from Kanye West being that individual first and seeing I can do that. That's possible, but in my own way. And it kind of just helped me to, come to terms with the flaws and imperfections I have. So I would say Kanye West.
Thank you guys. Just because we're pressed for time, you guys asked so many amazing questions that I encourage you to reach out to everybody on this panel. We've dropped their IG handles. I'm sure, let me know if I'm speaking for you, but I'm sure you can shoot them a DM, start the conversation. We want this conversation to be continued. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is just our first panel of the day. Right now, we're going to start a game show with none other than Mouse Jones, and it'll be on our live stream. So I'm dropping right now in the chat our main website. Please go there. It starts right now at 12:30, and we have continued tracks for the rest of the day. So I hope to see you guys again. And thank you, John, Maya, Saga. We got to do this again. But thank you everyone for tuning in.
John and Saga, let's do something together. Okay, let's talk off.
Oh yeah,
let's talk.
We cannot not do something.
Come on with it.
The following is commencing right now. It's upstairs.
There you
It's
go.
upstairs.
All right, let's go.
But feel free to drop off, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Peace, y'all. Give thanks. Bless.
God bless.